If you are watching this video, then it's no longer news that Russia has invaded Ukraine. The world is not happy about it. The media has been talking about it, and every nation in the world has shunned this move by Russia. Despite that, Russia was still stubborn enough to invade Ukraine by sending in their troops to attack. This conflict is going to affect the economy of so many nations in the West. However, the countries on the continent of Africa are not excluded. This conflict will have devastating effects in so many African states and will threaten their economies. This will put African governments under diplomatic pressure, forcing them to pick sides, which will escalate the feud between Russia and the Western world. Before we see how this crisis affects Africa, let us see how some African states reacted. South Africa, which is one of the richest countries in Africa and an economic giant, has called for the immediate withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukraine and condemns this act of war. South Africa is asking the two parties to resolve this issue peacefully. Here's what they had to say.
Armed conflict will no doubt result in human suffering and destruction, the effects of which will not only affect Ukraine, but also reverberate across the world. No country is immune to the effects of this conflict.
South Africa is saying this is like a blow to Russia. Given the economic ties these two countries have, Russia could only think of South Africa as an ally. Both countries are members of the BRICS, which is a group made up of world emerging economies. South Africa has investments in Russia worth $5 billion, while Russia has investments worth $1.4 billion in South Africa. Kenya, the East African economic giant and a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, has also condemned Russia for carrying out this act. In a speech by Kenya's ambassador to the UN Security Council, Martin Kamani said,
"The territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine stand breached. The Charter of the United Nations continues to wilt under the relentless assault of the powerful."
Gabon and Ghana are two other countries that are members of the UN Security Council. They have also condemned these acts by Russia. So far, no African country has shown its support or sided with Russia. Not even the Central African Republic or Mali, despite the fact that Russian forces are in their respective countries trying to help the governments fight insurgencies. However, there are signs that Sudan might be in support of Russia. Immediately the conflict started, the military commander of Sudan, General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, arrived in Moscow. The main goal of his trip was to strengthen ties with Russia at a time when the junta has become a pariah in the West for impeding the transition to democracy following the overthrow of long-serving ruler Omar al-Bashir. In another statement, the Russian ambassador to the Democratic Republic of Congo promises them that Moscow is ready to help the country end armed violence in the east of the country, which has been going on for some time. So, do we see where this is going? If you are still watching this video, it means you love our content. Why not take a second and hit the like button? This helps more people see these useful and informative videos. So how does this conflict affect Africa? Firstly, Russia controls 4.8% of the world's oil reserves, which produces about 80 billion barrels a year. When the conflict broke out, Russia stopped exporting its oil to the entire world. In just 2 days, the oil prices surged past $100 per barrel as the demand for oil was high but the supply was low. This is the highest level of oil prices since 2014. Oil-producing countries in Africa like Nigeria and Angola might definitely get a boost from this crisis, increasing the GDP of the respective countries. However, the downside is that the cost of transport across the continent will rise tremendously. We all know what happens when oil prices go up and transport increases. It will have a devastating effect on the prices of products. Charlie Robertson, who is a global chief economist at Renaissance Capital, once said,
"It becomes a double whammy of potentially higher food prices globally and higher energy prices pushing up inflation. And when central banks respond by hiking interest rates, it becomes a triple whammy."
This conflict actually offers a massive opportunity to oil-producing countries in Africa. Someone like Dangote, who launches his oil refinery, which is among the biggest in the world, might just be on his way to being one of the richest people in the world. Europe relies heavily on Russian oil. If the conflict escalates and Russia decides to do business only with China, the whole of Europe will have to rely on African oil. And this might just be the turning point for Africa to become that rich continent it deserves to be. However, one of the biggest dangers Africa faces is the likely rise of the prices of certain commodities, such as bread. This is because Russia and Ukraine alone supply 30% of the world's wheat, which is used in making flour. We have seen how in the past just the increase in the prices of bread had caused political instability, especially in the Arab nations of Africa. Countries like Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and Libya rely heavily on wheat, and this would have devastating effects if supplies have to drop and prices rise. What about Kenya? Part of Kenya's economy is heavily reliant on its tea export, and Russia is amongst its top 5 consumers. Kenya is bound to receive financial sanctions if Russia decides to stop importing its tea. What about the African students in Ukraine? Africa has its strong ties with Ukraine as far back as during the Soviet era. Ukraine has always been a prime destination for many African students who had always wished to further their studies. Thousands of Africans study in Ukraine's universities, especially in the field of medicine. Many more Africans live and work in Ukraine. Concerns about the safety of African citizens by their governments keep rising. In Ghana, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has urged all its citizens in Ukraine and Russia to seek shelter in their homes or wherever the governments provide. But the National Union of Ghana Students insists that the government should rather work on the immediate evacuation of the citizens, insisting that it is not as small or unserious as they might think it is. The African countries with the most students in Ukraine are Morocco has about 8,000 students. Nigeria came second with 4,000, followed by Egypt with 3,500 students. Please, if you found this information useful, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to our channel. We bring fresh content every now and then. Are there any effects of the Russia-Ukraine war you think we've left out? Let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.